All right, so let's think about gods for a second. Do you know the graphic novel writer Alan Moore? He wrote Watchmen. He wrote V for Vendetta. He wrote From Hell. He also has a great series called Promethea. But Alan Moore has one of the best quotes about gods that I've ever heard. And he said, "The one place gods inarguably exist is in our minds, where they are real beyond refute, in all their grandeur and monstrosity." Where is the one place that gods do exist for certain? And this applies to anyone, everywhere, any period of history, no matter what the fuck you believe. The one place that gods do exist is in the imaginations of people. That right there is such an important key and clue to everything. It's a key to the way that you think about the God of the Bible. It's a clue to how you can view every other God from any religion or world system from any period of time. Gods are and always have been in the imagination. That's all they have ever been. When I was leaving Christianity and reading everything I could get my hands on, everything that I felt drawn to, I was reading about Hinduism. I was reading about Jewish mysticism. I was reading about Vedanta, because I tried to just be like, well, if Christianity is not true, if I know that, if I'm certain of that, then I'm just curious about all this other stuff. I'm not even looking for a new belief system, not even looking for something to latch onto. I don't want a new religion. I'm just going to read all this stuff because it's out there in the world. People treat it seriously. People believe this stuff. And so what do these other spiritual systems have to say? So I was just soaking it all up as if I was exploring, as if not looking for any of it to be true or real, but just curious. And that's a very helpful way to go about it. And I was so curious about it because when I was still in the Christian world, anything outside of that belief system, as you probably know, is considered dangerous, heretical, satanic in some cases. And so once all of that baggage was gone, I was like, all right, I want to go fact finding. And, when it comes to thinking about gods and Christianity, this was one of the first pillars that sort of fell for me as I was deconstructing my own faith, was that, all right, there are so many gods and deities. Hinduism alone has thousands of deities. And I was like, okay, there's the God of the Bible, there's Jesus, there's Allah, there's all the gods of the Greek Parthenon. No, not the Parthenon, the Pantheon. Too similar, you know what I mean? There are so many different gods from so many world religions. And obviously they can't all be true. They can't all be real. They can't all be the main one. Christianity can be so arrogant as to say, we have the one true God. And it's just like, man, that closed-minded thinking now is really upsetting to me, because it's still all just based on a feeling, on like an idea, on a mindset that we have the only one, we have the real one, we have the best one. And that just immediately wipes out all other openness to other ideas and thoughts. But so I got really interested in Hinduism for a while, and particularly drawn to a few of their deities, a few of the main deities. For me, I was really interested in Krishna, who has a lot of parallels with Christ, actually, as a sort of figure, as a archetype. So I was really drawn to Krishna. I was interested in Ganesha. For a while, Lakshmi and Radha, who is Krishna's partner, essentially, and Kali Ma, Kali's pretty wild. She's got her tits out and her tongue out and is perpetually screaming, and she's wearing a necklace of skulls and is carrying a severed head. People who are of the Hindu faith, they know that all of these gods are not literally real. They're real in a certain sense, but is Krishna out there floating in heaven with a real physical body? No. He's real in a certain sense. He's real in people's imaginations, and he embodies certain attributes that certain people are going to be drawn to. But Hindus understand that all of their gods and all of those beautiful, fascinating paintings and depictions of them are simply representations of something broader and larger. And they give devotion to these deities and entities, knowing that they are not literally, physically real, but the truth of the mystery is so disembodied and is so obscure and doesn't have a physical form. So these deities with human-like forms exist so that they can give their devotion and love to something as a representation of the fullness of everything. That fullness of divinity, the absolute spirit. But because the truth of God, what God is and always was, and God is just one word for it, is formless, is infinite, is not able to be defined by words or the human mind, and they understand that, so they created these deities to give devotion to. Some followers of Hinduism will have one deity that they worship for their whole lives, you know? Krishna is a very popular one. And so this kind of thinking really did massive work to just remove a block when it comes to God. Because I was like, oh man, if that's all it has always been, is just these imaginary ideas and that these entities embody attributes for humans, then that makes everything so much easier. If they're all, in a certain sense, not real, and all of them are kind of real as well, in a certain sense. The God of the Bible has certain attributes, and that people can even worship that God or deity as an idea, but not as if that God is physically, literally real in material reality and controlling things. No, that God has always only existed in human minds, and the trouble came in when people started writing texts and building churches and forming their entire lives over what was just an idea to give devotion to that is representative of something larger and indescribable. This was such an important piece of knowledge for me, because then I was like, wow, all right, if none of them are real, including the God of the Bible, then all of the stuff that's wrapped up with the God of the Bible, like sin and judgment and hell and wrath, is also, it's gone. It was never true. It was never really there at all. And the people who fixate upon this deity are mistaken, and they were mistaken the whole time. And no wonder that we never, ever once have heard the voice of this God or seen him. People base their entire lives on this belief and idea. And so it just really quickly eradicated all thought of judgment and sin and wrath and hell. And also, when there's no fear of these gods or deities or spirits or entities or angels or demons, if all of them are just concepts of the human imagination that have developed these attributes and been written about and been represented with physical form over time, but in artistic depictions, if all of them are just that, then there is absolutely no danger in being curious about them and exploring them. And that if you feel drawn to a certain deity or entity, then at least follow that path and be curious about it and know that that entity is not going to be your new God, your new religion, but just be curious about it. See what's there. Find out what has been written about them. How have they been worshipped? What are their attributes? How have people written about them over time? And let's forget about gods for a second and talk about the power of the imagination. Even as it pertains to things like, do you have people in your life who are constantly complaining about their life, or they're constantly worried and scared about what's going to go wrong? You ask them how they're doing, and they list all these bad things that are happening. They list what they're worried about. They say what they're upset about. They're upset at this person. They hate their job. They're tired of everything. They're stressed out. This sort of language is kind of self-perpetuating. Not kind of, it is. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. These folks who may have legitimate, difficult situations, but their mindset about it and the way that they speak about their own life is going to continue to perpetuate that, because that is what they are creating for themselves. They believe that everything goes wrong all the time. They believe that this is a scary, difficult world, and they believe that their life sucks and work sucks, and I never get enough sleep and I never have enough money. And the way that they are talking is how they believe they deserve to live. But you probably know other people who are at least a little more positive, a little more just like, you know what, this life is not that serious. It's not that big of a deal, man. And they may have a way of kind of drifting through life, floating through life, and they kind of always have everything they need. I bring this up because it does relate powerfully and importantly to your years of believing in God and the way that you viewed your reality, the way that you understood the world and walked and operated through the world. If you're thinking that on the one hand, Jesus loves me and forgives me for everything I've ever done, but also his dad, Father God, is really mad all the time and is like seemingly watching and recording everything I ever do. And I'm going to have to own up to that at the end of my life when I meet him on Judgment Day or whatever the fuck that is. This can create such a complicated and confusing way of being. It gets so mixed up, especially when you learn this stuff as a little kid, of being like having the completely dissonant message of he loves me so much, he wants to give me bliss in heaven forever, but also like if I fuck up too much and don't ask for forgiveness, or like if this is out of balance by the time I die, then I go burn and suffer forever. What the fuck? And also living in the mindset of the imagination of like, I'm a Christian. I'm walking around in the world with the real truth. And oh, look at all these poor heathens, all these people living in sin without Jesus. If they just knew what I knew, then they'd be saved and be so, fucking arrogant all the time. I hate that. That's, so insufferable. Those are the people who are probably not going to ever leave Christianity in this lifetime, are the ones who, anyway, it's beside the point. You already know. You were perhaps creating this reality for years in your mind. You were living under this imaginary way of operating that was like, ugh, you're in this kind of insecure zone at all times of believing that you have salvation, but also worried about the threat of sin and viewing yourself as bad. Viewing yourself as sinful and bad, and what that does to the mind and body, that you're moving in the world and having this sort of judgment system of your own actions. Like, oh, good thing I'm doing a good thing, but so much of what I do is bad and evil, and I have to ask forgiveness for it. It's like, what a clusterfuck for the brain to sort out. Horrible. And the way that it just has this depressive nature on the mind to walk around thinking that you are defined by how bad you are, that you're defined by the evil things that you've done, and that the only way to be liberated from how bad and evil I am is to beg God for forgiveness. Oh, please let me be one of the ones that's saved. Fuck that. None of that was ever true. And the people who made you feel that way were fucking evil, or they were just deeply, deeply misled. Whew. It's heavy stuff, man. That's no joke. That's serious delusion. That's serious brainwashing. And if you were subject to that, I'm so sorry, because none of that was ever true about you. None of it. And we'll get into that more in the sin section later. All that to basically say what you believe about your own reality and how you view yourself in the world in your imagination matters, and the influences and contexts that inform that view of yourself matter very much. This is not the best movie in the world, but something that I watched recently that I really liked was The Beach Bum by Harmony Korine, with Matthew McConaughey. It's a pretty silly movie about a complete, someone who is walking their own path and living in complete freedom. But he has this great line in there that says, "Man, I believe the universe is conspiring to show me a good time." And there's some truth to that, having that mindset of like, you know what? This life is supposed to be fun. It is supposed to be carefree. Sure, difficult shit happens, but like the difficult shit also always passes. And his mindset, his belief, his imagination, his programming is, I'm here to have a good time. And my universe reinforces that idea. And there is something true about that. Even outside of all the religious stuff, even as a personal experiment, try to operate under that way of thinking. Just pretend. What if I wasn't worried? What if I believed that this life was all about having fun and enjoying myself, and that I actually could do what feels most exciting and what feels most fun, and just see what happens.